Welcome to Nitpicking Nerds. Today we're going to answer a question that every single Commander player has asked. Which land should you play in EDH?
This is literally everything you need to know about lands in Commander.
I'm your host, Joe Cherries.
I'm your host, BZ, and that makes us the Nitpicking Nerds. I got some flack because I missed saying happy birthday to whoever's birthday is today in the last video. So double happy birthday to anyone whose birthday has been in the last 5 days. Anyway, that's because we make daily content. Enough for everyone's birthday. If you want to support birthdays, go to patreon.com, and as long as you support the channel with money, birthdays will continue to happen.
Yes, that is 110% true. Like, he's not lying. Also, if you want to support us by spending money of your own, well, go to tcgplayer.com, click our affiliate link in the description below. Using that link, when you buy the card you were going to buy anyway, for the same exact price, we get a kickback and you support this channel. Same is true for Dragon Shields, best sleeves in the multiverse.
Good sleeves.
Good sleeves. You can get those by using the link. Same price you'd get them for at the store, but guess what? The nerds are getting supported again.
It's a double whammy. You're supporting all the companies in the world. I guess Nitpicking Nerds is technically a business. We do own a business called Nitpicking Nerds. It's just a YouTube channel, though.
LLC. Yeah,
LLC, baby.
Nitpicking Nerds, LLC. So, what are we doing today, BZ?
This is a full-on guide. We kind of sort of did the crash course YouTube short yesterday about, hey, what are the best dual lands to play? And this is just, if you are playing Commander and you are wondering at all what lands you should be playing, this is the video for you. We are covering all of the non-budget manafixing, all of the non-budget utility, and then if you want to skip to this chapter in this video, we're also covering all of the budget fixing and the budget utility lands. So this is like every land you could ever consider,
yes,
aside from the most niche, one-off, two-off Commander lands that is not worth listing.
Yeah, exactly. We pretty much are going over everything for Commander. If it's a land, we're going over it within this video. Some things we'll go over in more detail, some things we'll go over in less detail. Like BZ said, there's going to be the best, easiest thing right here. Cards like Swarm Yard that go in almost at 0.001% of Commander decks. We're not going to mention that, but we will go over everything that has at least, if it goes in even 1% of decks, we're going over it in this video.
Yeah, let's say at any given Commander deck, if you have 35 lands, we're covering 34 of them.
Yeah, let's do this. All right, let's get into this. First thing we're doing is non-budget fixing. These lands, their function, well, it's to tap for colors. We're getting colors out of these lands. First and foremost, top priority, every single time you build a Commander deck, if you don't have a budget, every fetch land you can put in. If you're not on a budget and you're not restricting yourself in some way, you literally should just play every single one you can play in your deck. They're that insane.
I think that's the last time in the non-budget section we'll say, this is a non-budget section. I can't help you past this point. I can't. Fetch lands are mandatory for power in Commander. They are some of the best Magic cards ever printed, and it's not even close. They shuffle your library. They trigger landfall at additional time. They put a card in your graveyard. They put a land in your graveyard. They are so useful to almost every strategy, even aside from the fact that any fetch land can get you any dual land, basically. You can find any color off any fetch land.
I mean, if you want to think of something of how insane these really are, a card like Crucible Worlds goes from this unplayable jank card that you play in no deck to this staple of certain archetypes simply because of fetch lands. Now, a little less than those, Prismatic Vista, Fabled Passage, they're both good. They're really strong. Just wanted to mention them here because they are sort of fetch lands.
They're like the budget cousins. Not budget, just less expensive cousins.
Yeah,
they're not budget, they are less expensive.
Prismatic Vista is more expensive than
all the enemy ones.
The enemy ones currently.
I don't know what to tell you. They're worse fetches. How about that? The next priority comes with Rainbow Lands. So we got the fetch lands. They're Rainbow Lands plus because they do other things. These are mostly just, they come in untapped and they fix your mana. So Command Tower, think that. It's just Rainbow Land, any color you need, you got it. Mana Confluence, City of Brass, also just straight up, I would say auto includes in any deck with 2 or more colors.
Yeah, you're literally, like you said, every single deck you build that's 2 or more colors, you're not restricted by budget. They're just going in. It's Mana Confluence, City of Brass. You already knew about Command Tower. Everyone knows that one. But the life's not going to matter. It just never, ever matters at all, especially in your very high power decks, which if you're on that budget, you're going to be creeping up in power level at least a little bit.
Yeah, as long as you have fetch targets, you're not really looking like the extra basics after whatever the minimum number you can play for fetches is. They don't really do much for you. So I'll take every red-green duel with almost no downside And this, even though it seems a little weird, like Mana Confluence and Gruul, it's like, yep, not close.
Yeah,
real good.
Yeah, a couple more rainbow-like-ish things. We have Reflecting Pool, Exotic Orchard, Spire of Industry, and the World Tree. These all can make you all kinds of mana. World Tree just requires you to have some extra lands in play, so that's nothing. That's pretty simple to do.
Yeah, 2 other auto-includes that can warp games and are just fantastic. Urborg and Yavimaya. I would say virtually every green and black deck wants these cards. It's like 95%. They are really as close as it gets to auto-include. They fix you for that color for the rest of the game.
You just need any advantage, any reason to want to play it. And the reasons come super easily. If there are mono green decks that don't want it, yeah, of course. There's going to be the mana base that doesn't want the Yavimaya sometimes. But as soon as you I put in 5-6 utility lands that don't tap for green. All right, I'm in. I'm already in for it.
Yep.
This card, they're stupidly easy to include in your deck. They probably literally go in 98% of all. If it's a green one, Yavimaya is going to 98%. Black deck, Urborg's going to 98%. That's how crazy they are.
Any tension that would be made by these cards is removed because they enter untapped. So this is identical to a forest. When I'm playing it from my hand, it's identical to a forest. In play, it's a forest. It just fixes you, stops your fetches from damaging you, stops even like Mana Confluence from pinging you because it creates an alternate mana ability. Super really good cards. We're gonna start like more rapid fire listing these because there's less to talk about. But it's just
definitely.
What are the best dual land cycles now? We're gonna prioritize them.
The first is OG duels. I mean, obviously these have no downsides. They're strictly better basics.
Yep.
They come in untapped. They have both types. They're fetchable. It's hard to explain just how important being fetchable is. It's literally why OG duels are at the highest. There's other lands that might overtake this and be able to be as good, but they can't because these are literally fetchable. And the fetch lands are by far. Fetch lands aren't just 2-color lands. They're 5-color lands. That's how they're so good.
So silly. Next, it's their distant cousin, the shock lands. We start at 40 life. Paying 2 life, not really that big of a deal. Mm-hmm. They have types. We can find them. So if we include Watery Grave, Hallowed Fountain, Godless Shrine in our Esper deck, all of our fetch lands now get any of those.
Yep. You think that's all you have to say? Crowd lands. These come in untapped if you have 2 or more opponents. Guess what? You always have 2 or more opponents. This is Commander. Unless it's down to a 1v1 situation, it's coming in untapped. So these are just untapped, but they're not fetchable, unfortunately.
Yeah, from your hand, excluding fetch lands, these are the most reliable duels in the whole format. I mean, if we're so far in the late game that I only have 1 opponent, how much is a tap land hurting me? I probably just sequenced it so that I have these in play before we're on turn 30. I think these lands are insanely good.
Yes. We also have slow duels right after that. These are the lands that come in untapped if you control at least 2 other lands. That's pretty simple. Most turns are actually not the first 2 turns of the game.
Yeah, I don't know what hand you're keeping because, for them to mess with you, they kind of have to be in your opening hand or one of the first 2 cards you draw. So what hand are you keeping with like 2 lands, and this is one of them? I don't know how these can really screw you.
You can get there definitely are the hands that are keepable, and it will punish you probably like less than 1% of the time.
Seriously.
They exist where it's like, oh, Soul Ring, 2 lands, and one of them exists. Like, okay, there's some punishment there, but guess what? It doesn't matter because the rest of the game, it's an untapped duel. And if you draw any land in your first 2 turns, then guess what? It already didn't punish you.
Yeah, make it past turn 2, and these have no downside. So next, Pain lands. They enter untapped. They produce either color. They ping you, though. But what's great about these is that they can produce colorless and not ping you. So as soon as you don't need the colors from these, they're colorless lands and you don't have to worry about it. But if you ever do need the colors, they're there when you need it and they ping you. It's a small price to pay.
They tend to just tap for most of the game. They're going to tap for colorless and then if it's early game or you don't have enough green or red or you just didn't draw enough, then they belly out there. Also, these go up in equity if you care about the wingding that they make.
Absolutely. It's a free source of wingdings.
Yeah.
It's free real estate.
Free wingding. If you're not because we haven't explained this in a while. Wingding is what we call the
colorless only.
The colorless mana symbol.
Yes, that's a wingding. Next, Triomes. Any 3-color plus deck can really play these. They're really, really good with fetches is the main thing because they enter tapped. None of the other ones on this list really enter tapped most of the time. Not the best ones. So you're paying a little bit of a cost, but they fix you for 3 land types instead of just 2. So they're extra fixing fetchable tri-lands.
Yeah. Anytime that you can afford to get a tap land, you get a Triome. If you're in a 3 or more color deck, granted you're in the right 3 color decks because we don't have the Bant Triome yet, but hopefully we get it. Come on, Capenna!
Yeah, so fetch a Triome if you need a tap land, and cycling ain't bad. Next is the Horizon lands. There's only 6 of these, so don't get triggered by that because I can't even think about it. The fact that there's 6 of these. It's all the enemies in Horizon Canopy, which is what they're named after. They ping you always. They enter untapped always, and you can cash them in for a card later. heck yeah.
Yeah, they're good. They're good. I think that these can sometimes add up, especially if you I stray away from these in multiples. I don't want to put 3 or 4 of these in my deck.
It's hard to even do that.
Yeah, I want to play 1 or I want to play 2 of them, because if you play 5 in your deck, it's like the damage adds up quick. So this is the one that I like to keep down to like play 1, maybe 2.
Yeah, all right. The check lands are next. They check to see if you have an island or a plains for a glacial fortress, and then it enters untapped. So really, like 80% of the time, 85%, these are entering untapped, and they're just duels. You don't have to worry about it. Just especially they work well with fetches, because fetches work with shocklands and triomes and OG duels, and this just says, hey, don't have to worry about me. I'm going to enter untapped.
Starting with these checklands here, we're starting to fall into the field of like, okay, this is more 2-color decks.
On the fence.
Yeah, we will put these in our non-budget decks, but usually when they're 2 colors, because you just can overload with the top half of what we just went over.
Yeah, for 3 colors.
For 3 colors and up, and that's just completely true. So now we're on like duels. We're going to play for like 2-color decks. You said the first ones, which are the check lands. Next one, filter lands. They filter your, like, if you make a green or red, it filters into green or red or green or red. Do whatever you want. Do something cool.
What's powerful about these is that they represent either color you don't have in multiples. So if you only draw green lands, but you have a fiery thicket or something, fireleaf thicket, I don't know. You can produce 2 red off of your 1 green. Downside being they don't produce colored mana without a buddy land, without a friend to help put some color land into it. So you do get a free wingding, but it's kind of medium early, very, very not colored.
Yeah. Another one, battle lands. They come in untapped if you control 2 basics, 2-color decks. You have a decent amount of basics in 2-color decks, and you're gonna probably get some out using some ramp. White gets out basics, green gets out basics, and these are gonna come in untapped a decent amount of the time.
But the main thing is they're fetchable.
Yes, absolutely. Also, cycling lands, same exact thing. They always come in tapped, but you can cycle them if you need, or you can fetch them up, which is the only reason they're on it, because these are bad. These lands stink if you cannot fetch them.
Yeah, they would be relegated to the budget section, but they're not, because they can be fetched. Tainted lands, it's only the black X duels, and they produce either color that they are if you have a swamp. So it's kind of like a check land, but it always enters untapped, produces wingding, and then if you got a swamp, you're free to go.
Yeah, these go in any two color. This is very specific. 2-color. One of your colors is black.
Yeah, exactly. Lastly, this is like just 2-color. You're just going to only want to play one of these max. The pathways. It's either a red land or a green land. It's either a black land or a blue land. It's never both, so it's never perfect. It can fix your mana a little, but it's not, late game, it's not much better than a basic.
Yeah, it's upgraded forest or upgraded.
Slightly.
Yeah, forest. It's forest or it's plains. Whichever one you need for the situation at the time. I'm just going to take these in 2-color decks every time.
Obviously, I'd rather have any land that can produce one of 2 colors anytime I need it, because if I'm stuck with a blue and a black card, this is not helping me. But that brings us to the non-budget utility/colorless lands. This is like all of them. So if you're wondering, you missed anything for your deck, not after this.
Yeah, these don't, obviously, every single one of these doesn't go in every single deck. You would have a deck filled with utility lands and no fixing.
It would stink.
Yeah, you got to pick the ones that are correct for your deck. You have to determine which ones are right for your deck. We're going to mention which decks these go in, but ultimately, you as the deck builder have to make a decision.
For the color fixing, you kind of just max out. You play almost as many as possible.
You start at the top.
Except for when you have these utility lands that creep up and they're even just better. You'd rather have a utility land than most of your fixing, and then that ends up being you kind of want to max out at about 8 or 10 utility lands, because it's going to really mess with your mana base.
For fixing, you can just start at the top of our list and just make your way down it.
Seriously, yeah.
Until you have a mana base, and then leave 6 slots for utility after that. But it's like you can just do that with the priority. We can't do that here. You got to pick which ones you want. First, the best land in the format, not even close. Gaia's Cradle. This card is bonkers. If you're a creature deck that's going to reliably have creatures on the board, guess what? Gaia's Cradle is literally insane. It is. Like I said, I wasn't exaggerating. This is literally the best land that is legal in this format.
By miles. And the closest we get to a second place is Ancient Tomb. Goes in every deck, any deck, except if you're like 4 colors, maybe. Depends. This is an insane land. Pick them up now, because they're only getting more expensive as more people join the format. But taps for 2, straight up, you just take 2 damage. I'll take it every day. This is like turn 1 Signet plays.
They've been nice with Ancient Tomb lately, getting reprints in the past couple years.
Yes.
I think it'll probably see a reprint again in the near future, and I would scoop them up as soon as you see them get that reprint. It's 2 weeks into the new Masters, whatever set that they choose to put it in.
And maybe it'll be the new Double Masters.
Yeah, exactly. Just get it. This card is very good.
Yeah, Nykthos trying to nix Cabal Coffers. These are kind of together. If you produce a lot of swamps or you produce a lot of pips, these can go ham. If you want to untap them, a lot of green decks love Nykthos, a lot of black decks love Cabal Coffers. They feel pretty free a lot of the time to play these cards, especially with Urborg.
Nykthos feels, in any 1 or 2 color deck, Nykthos is going in almost 90% of the time. You have to have a really, really, really even down the line split in a 2 color deck to be like, maybe I don't want Nykthos. It would have to be so evenly, weirdly split, and maybe your pips aren't crazy. But that's so rare. Just throw it in your 2... without looking at your 2-color deck, if you ask me if you should put Nykthos in, I'd say yes.
Yeah, if you're like a mono-white Fiddlebender deck, maybe you don't want it because you have a lot of other things going on, and most of it's colorless, but you know what we're talking about when we say almost always play Nykthos. Last one, this is seriously one of the best lands in the format. Maybe it's not at the same caliber as those, but Phyrexian Tower is nuts. When you sacrifice a creature, you're the deck that wants to sacrifice a creature, get them in the bin, make tokens. It's just a land that comes in untapped, always makes a wingding, and just taps for 2 mana when you need it to. This card is seriously insane.
Yeah, coming in untapped is just what pushes this over the top. The fact of the matter is, it taps for wingding always, 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 always. And when it doesn't tap for wingding, you're sacrificing to get something out of your creature, or you have a useless creature to get rid of, and you're making it an Ancient Tomb that doesn't damage you.
Yes. Next, we want to talk about one of the lands we play the most. It's Field of the Dead, and this wants you to have 7 lands with different names, and you make 2/2s. I am so high on this card, it's not even funny. I'm playing this card in monocolored decks. You'll see one on the next episode, on the second episode of Shuffle Scuffle. I'm jamming it in because I think it's so easy to work your mana base such that Field of the Dead in non-combo heavy games is going to produce zombies almost every time. So it pairs well with the Snow Basics, which are just a free, different named basic land for your Field of the Dead to make it super easy to trigger.
Yeah, if you have any reason, Snow Basics are the ones where if you have a reason, Field of the Dead is that reason, or any other random, I care about snow or anything, they're free rolls. So they are literally, not literally, they are strictly better basics in almost every single sense. And it's, I hate that about Snow Basics, but they are free rolls. I've come more around on Field of the Dead. 2 and up, I'm in 100% of the time. 1 color decks, sometimes.
We're reeling him in. He's coming around to the Beezy side of auto-include city. Okay, next is this especially works with Field of the Dead, but it's the legendary cycle of lands from Legends. The untapped legendary creature matters cycle from Kamigawa, and the castles from Throne of Eldraine. They're all untapped either all the time or almost all the time because they check for a basic, and they just have other abilities, so they can be better than basics.
So the legendary cycle from Legends, to start with that, is 100% comes in untapped, strictly better swamp, island, mountain, or forest. The white one is banned.
Crocus is banned.
Is banned in this format for a good reason. Same thing with the legendary lands, but these actually have text on them.
Solid text that you can use on your commander or other legendaries. Please overlook the fact that Tolarian Isle or whatever it is, these cards kind of stink, but they have more text on them than a basic land. So even if it was pay 10 mana, scry 1, that's better than Island.
Exactly. If just strictly better upside island. I mean, to be fair, realistically, the blue one, Talaria, whatever, I think it's just called Talaria.
Oh, okay.
It's literally just island with a different name. And when that matters, free roll. Field
of the Dead?
Now, I want to warn, I'm going to throw this warning in here, and I meant to say it a little bit earlier.
Okay.
There is obviously, dependent on who you play with, the metas you play in, and what kind of cards you expect to see, a higher priority on having basics. It goes up and down, fluctuating based on if you're going to see back to basics. Are you going to see Blood Moon?
They're pretty rare.
They're rare, but if you play in a meta where these are real, then keep your basic count a little higher. We're not safe. We will get punished by Blood Moon every time. We'll admit it. We're going in and we're making our land base work for us because in the games we get punished are so much slimmer than the games where we get rewarded for
I'm so not worried about Blood Moon. Even if it hurts me massively, I would never regret for a second having a mana base with the souped up basics and more utility in it.
I agree.
Next, since every deck really wants these cards, it's land destruction on land. Strip Mine and Wasteland are the go-tos. We'll talk about some of the budget options, but these are really the only ones I'm going to play if I have no budget.
I am a Strip Mine connoisseur. Go, if I am playing a 3-color or less deck, and sometimes 4-color or 5-color, depending on what. In 4 and 5 color, I guess the best way for me to put it is I would put it in a spell slot. That also just happens to be an extra land for my deck. But I'm 100% in 3 or less colors. I think every deck wants a strip mine. It should just have one just in case. Just make sure your mana base can fix well enough. Like, if you follow our priority list, your mana base is going to be insane after you put the first 25 in.
Yeah.
It won't matter that you have a colorless land 1 down.
Yeah, these really help get you out of tight spots. I don't like putting land destruction in my 99 as much unless it's a free roll. But you got things like Acidic Slime. That is not a free roll way to destroy lands. You are overpaying for this 2/2, but like times a million. So I'm going to cut it down, play Nature's Claim and Rex Sage, and then I'll just move the land destruction to my land slot.
Yeah, exactly. There's like 3 spells that hit lands reliably in Commander: Generous Gift, Beast Within, and Chaos Warp. And those are it. That's the only things.
I am also high on Cleansing Wildfire. I think that card is good.
I think it is pretty good too. Especially if you get to combine it with Flakes and Shokir, you feel like a genius.
Oh, you're just IQ of 1,000 at that point. So let's move down to the Graveyard Hate. Not a lot of Graveyard Hate options. You got Bojuka Bog and you got Scavenger Grounds. Now, Bojuka Bog enters tapped, unlike most of every land we've talked about this entire time. So it falls off in more competitive things. And Scavenger Grounds is kind of finicky because it messes with your graveyard and you have to sacrifice it.
Yeah, Bojuka Bog is great though. Again, we don't really play 9 and 10. We tend to play 8 and below in power level usually. Now sometimes we go a little higher, but with that Bojuka Bog, it's going in every one of my decks. Every black deck I play, I'm just throwing the Bojuka Bog, and I love having it in a land slot. So I'm just draw out late game. Oh, nice Carador deck.
Yeah, so when we've kind of just been front loading all this information, and I know people are going to watch it and absorb it. So this is as good a time as any to mention. I'm really trying to minimize tap lands. We've barely mentioned any. The reason we prioritize things as such is none of the top 10 duels except for Triomes enter tapped. We're just fixing our mana. We're not going to skip any turns. We're going to minimize the chance of us going, oh shoot, I have a 5-drop and I have my 5th land is tapped. We're not worrying about that because almost all the stuff we want is untapped, except for maybe, honestly, I want to go 5 or less tap lands in pretty much every deck.
Yeah, I agree with you 100% on that.
Yeah, especially Field of Dead. That is the special case for a tap land.
All right, next, High Market. This is a sack outlet on the land. It literally just says tap sack.
Yep.
It says gain a life. Doesn't matter. This is just the ability to. They're going to exile something, I'll sack it. They're going to mess with my board. Okay, I can sack it instead of having it exiled. It's just that much better.
If you play cards in your deck like Protean Hulk and Pattern of Rebirth, and you might not have a sack outlet at any given moment, but this is a land that they cannot stop. And especially I love that the cost is sacrifice a creature, so they can't even respond to it if they want to do something to your creature. It's dead when you pay the cost.
Yes. Moving on, we have Gaia Reach Sanitarium and Mikokora Center of the Sea. They both produce Wingdings. Coming on tap, pay 2, tap them. Gaia Reach says each player draws, then discards. Mikokoro says each player draws, period.
They're kind of group huggy. Mikokoro is for group hug or extra cutthroat, where you're like, end of turn, I just need one more card. I'm barely ever going to activate this, but it's here when I need it. And then Gaia Reach works because if you're feeling your graveyard more than everyone else, and you can take advantage of it, they're going up on card quality, but they're not going up on cards, so it feels a lot worse, or a lot better, a lot less worse.
Yeah, exactly. Gaia Reach Sanitarium just goes with your graveyard decks and themes. Moving on, we got some card draw in the land slot. Bonder's Enclave. All you have to do is have a creature with power 4 or greater, and suddenly you can tap pay 3, so basically 4 to draw a card. Great to have as a fallback, especially if your commander has 4 or greater power.
An even better card, I think, War Room doesn't ask anything of you. You have a commander, you have colors in the commander's slot, so the question is how much life do you want to pay for a card in your land slot that's just totally reliable. I'm in for 2 or less usually. It's hard to justify going this far down on utility lands. In a 3-color deck, you're going to start to hurt your mana base. But in 2 and 1, this is like an auto-include.
Yeah, agree with you 100% on that. Now we have a little cycle that exists. There's Academy Ruins, Hall of Heliod's Generosity, and Volrath's Stronghold. These are 3 cards that functionally are the same. They all tap for a colorless. Or you could pay 1 and whatever color it says to put an artifact on top, an enchantment on top, or a creature on top of your library. The artifact's the most powerful one by a mile.
Oh, yeah.
It's not even close, but the most expensive one is Volrath's Stronghold, because that's a reserve list card.
I think Volrath's Stronghold is the worst one, and I think
so
Heliod's Generosity is very unique, so it kind of goes Ruins, Generosity, Stronghold. But they're all cards that a lot of decks are interested in. In similar vein to Academy Ruins, Buried Ruin is a worse version, but it gets the card right to your hand. So you are sacrificing the land for, I can put this right now. Lastly, there's Yavimaya Hollow. Any green deck with big chonkers is probably interested in this, especially if you're only 1 or 2 colors. It just regenerates a creature and enters untapped.
Yeah, it's one of those random cards where it's just like, wow, this card like, I remember when I found it, I'm like, this card exists? I'll take it. And I bought it for like 30. It's like 80 or 100 now. It's so expensive.
I guarantee a lot of people watching just had no idea this existed.
I mean, I didn't know it existed until like 3 years ago.
It's one of the better colorless lands you can play, so now you know. Also, in an artifact sub-theme area, we got artifact lands. They all enter untapped and produce that color. Darksteel Citadel enters untapped, is indestructible, and Treasure Vault enters untapped and makes treasures. Nice for searching out artifacts, your Tezzerets and your Trinket Mages and all this other stuff. Just helps synergize. When your lands count towards your artifact count, like a Construct or something, it feels real good, and it's a lot of extra value.
Yeah, absolutely. These lands are very, very good. Just be aware of the danger of them. If somebody casts, Bane of Progress or an overloaded Vandal Blast, you're going to get extra punished by these. But the upside is almost always worth it when you care about artifacts.
Just don't jam in a million and don't have a million in play at once, and you'll probably be okay. Urza's Saga. Now that's a good land because it replaces itself with a Soul Ring or a Mana Crypt or a Wayfarer's Bauble or a Skull Clamp or a Sensei's Divining Top or a Soul Guide Lantern or whatever you want to replace it with. So it doesn't matter that it sacrifices itself. It makes 2 Constructs on the way out if you want, and it's just a nuts land. It's so good.
Yeah, it's a very good land. It's just it basically is going to be a soul land after 2 turns. It's going to transform itself into a Soul Ring every single time. And like you said, you get the constructs when you need them, if you need them. Oh my God, the utility of this land too, like you said, like just get something like top. Oh, so silly.
I mean, the fact that they can find Graveyard Hate with Soul Guide Lantern is also extra spicy. I just think this is one of the most playable utility lands that's ever existed.
Yeah.
Less playable, but potentially more powerful, is Vesuva and Thespian Stage. They clone lands. You got to be wanting a very specific set of lands, or you got to be wanting 1 land every single game. And if you do, this is your 2nd and 3rd copy, like Field of the Dead.
Yeah, that's why my Vesuva and Thespian Stage basically always copy Field of the Dead.
It starts getting really untenable to deal with 3 of those things.
Next, there's some counter stuff, stopping people from countering your spells. Cavern of Souls is great for any deck that is tribal theme or your commander is so central to your game plan, it needs to resolve. In fact, you're willing to play a land that tests for colorless 90% of the time because you need to make it uncounterable. Cavern of Souls, very solid because of that line of text.
Boseiju is a little bit different, and there's tap, so oof, not really happy to see that, but you can make your instants and sorceries uncounterable by spending the mana that it produces on them, but it costs you 2 life. So it really makes you pay for that uncounterability, so you got to make sure it matters in your meta or your deck needs some instant or sorcery to resolve. Yeah,
exactly. This card has a high cost, but it also has an extremely high upside for the decks that can take advantage of it the most.
Yep. Creature lands, these are very niche, but I thought they were still mentioning because there's so many of them. You got your Ink Moth, your Blink Moth. There's a cycle of 2 color ones that all make into different random nonsense elementals. Some of them combo, some of them don't combo, some of them suck. You got to figure out if your deck wants creature lands because the answer is probably no. But if you do, just make sure you check them out, especially the colorless ones.
Not on a budget. It's few and far between that you're avoiding these 95% of the time. But there are the corner cases. There are the decks that absolutely want man lands. And they don't just want them. They're actively good and are going to power up the deck's power.
Exactly. Like, for example, some of them care about activated abilities. Well, there's some lands that have 0 cost activated abilities on them, and that lets you go infinite and is useful. Oh, if you're playing Death Touch Tribal, maybe you want Hissing Quagmire. A lot of things to consider there, but we're going to move on to the Innistrad utility cycle, which kind of also extends to the Ravnica dual-colored, colorless lands that have activated abilities for the guilds, but they mostly stink. So Skarg the Rage Pit is the one we're going to actually shout out. How about the Innistrad ones?
The Innistrad lands, a lot of them are very good. These, there are some that are absolute whiffs. I mean, there's, what is it?
Most of them are really great.
There's one really...
Stensia Bloodhall is a whiff.
It's the Bloodhall, yeah. There's one... The Bloodhall is a whiff. That card stinks. It is terrible. But the Kessig Wolf one, Gavin...
Actually, the other 9 might just be completely playable.
Yeah, they're all just solid in the right deck. It just depends on what you're trying to do. Does this go along with my theme? Probably stick in the 2-color decks with these because these are so low on my priority. But if I'm in a 2-color deck and I can afford a few extra, these are going to come up quite often, especially counter synergies for the
Township.
And Kessig Wolfram, I think, is probably the best one of these.
Yeah, I think Kessig Wolfram's really good, and I also think Alchemist Refuge has a huge upside. There's games that card can dominate by itself, but it's real specific. So let's get to some colored tapped lands that a lot of decks find useful, but they're also pretty niche. Valakut. It's the next spammiest land after Field of the Dead because it's not legendary, even though it's the highest point in that mountain range. But it's not legendary, so you can put 3, 5, 10 Valakuts out if you can somehow find out how to do that, and then just burn everybody out with like Escape Shift.
You use like Dryad of the Elysian Grove to make everything in the mountains, and now every time you're playing any land, you're just hitting stuff for 3. This can be a win con. Mystic Sanctuary, this is just an incredibly strong land.
So good.
If you have 3 islands on the battlefield and that's just untapped, and you put an instant sorcery from your graveyard on the top of your library, card is bonkers. I mean, there's a reason this is just banned in Modern.
A lot of stuff. I think it's banned in Pauper and maybe somewhere else. But this also is an island. You can fetch it with Flooded Strand.
Mm-hmm.
If Flooded Strand, when you draw it, puts your best spell on top, I don't even know what. Like, that's so much land utility, it's not even funny.
That's probably the reason this card is banned, because it is an island.
Yes, it's just absolutely nuts. Dryad Arbor is the other one. You can also fetch for Dryad Arbor. It's less relevant. You feel like you're getting away with less, but it does put a creature in the graveyard, helps with Delirium and all that random stuff. My Carador deck has a land in the graveyard, but it helps Carador cost less.
It puts a creature on the battlefield, is what you meant to say when you fetch it.
No, when you kill it, it puts a creature in the graveyard, I guess.
That's
what
true.
I meant to say.
Yeah, completely. I mean, Dryad Arbor is a card that is playable, especially because, 1, like you said, fetchable, and 2, Green Sun Zenith. If you're playing Green Sun Zenith in your deck, throw Dryad Arbor in. It turns your Green Sun Zenith, which is a great late card game, great middle card game, great everywhere in the game. Oh, now it's great on turn 1, 2.
It's Llanowar Elves.
It makes a dork. The card is so dumb.
Yeah, Winding Canyons goes right up there with Alchemist Refuge, but it's better. It just makes your creatures have flash. It's colorless, and I just think it's a little bit easier to play because it's not blue-green. Maybe not better, but easier to play. A lot of decks are going to be interested in this. But definitely a non-budget card. It's
yes.
$100.
We got these ones here. These are niche. I'll say these are niche, but we wanted to mention them because they go in a higher percent than 1% of decks.
Decks that focus on their commander. If they want to bump their commander.
Yeah, exactly. So we have Witch's Clinic. Give your commander lifelink. Okay. In for that, love Witch's Clinic. It's super strong. When your commander has power, probably 5 or greater, gain a lot of life. Tirade Sanctum, put counters on your commander and potentially make him indestructible if you need to. And then we have Command Beacon. You put your commander from your commands into your hand. This is for commanders that are going to have tons of attacks.
And you thought we wouldn't get here. No. You're putting MDFC lands in your deck. You're doing it because all the mythic ones are busted and they go in 1 and 2 color decks. Busted as in it is the freest roll of all free rolls in the history of mankind. They are so good. Balgad Recovery, Kabir Takedown, among others that are just amazing to include. And then we'll also mention the Ixalan flip lands because some of them flip into lands that are very useful.
Yeah, which can count towards your ramp. Yeah, but the MDFCs, like we said, the mythics are the freest roll. Take those mythics, throw them. You're playing 1 color, you're playing 2 color. 100% of the time, I'm playing the mythic MDFCs. Just never not. Like, I can't even imagine a world where I don't put them in a 1 and 2 color deck.
Please, if you haven't listened to us yet, now is the time to get those MDFC mythics.
All right, moving on to budget fixing. You don't have a ton of money to throw at your mana base, so now we're going to show you some cheap lands where we start all these are under $3, most of them at least.
Yeah, your priorities switch around a lot when you're looking to make the best deck for $100 versus the best deck. Everything changes, so we're going to relist our priorities of the budget lands that you can pick up for, in most cases, $3 down to like 5 cents.
Before I hop in, we are listing cycles. This means that sometimes, not every single one of a cycle will be under $3, but most of them are, or a bunch of them are, and it's worth mentioning. You obviously have to look yourself if you're like, okay, I'm in a 2-color deck, is Adakar Waste under $3, because the first one we have here is Painlands. Well, Adakar Waste isn't under $3, but like 5 or 6 of the Painlands are like $1, $2 max.
Especially if you want to just, split the difference. The enemy Painlands, they're all like 5 cents because they've been printed a million times. They were one of the go-to core set lands for a bit. They were in standard for like 5 years. Painlands are really good. Like we said, they enter untapped, and these are like your OG duels because they're closer you're going to get to an untapped free duel.
They're absolutely premium. Chef's kiss. Next to our battle lands and cycling lands, we mentioned they have types. We do have other cards in existence that care about types, like your Nature's Lores and cards like that. So having types bumps these up to the 2 and 3 spots on this list.
Especially since number of basics, when you're in budget, goes up, so battle lands enter untapped more of the time. And we can afford, our tolerance for tap lands goes way up when we're in a budget. We're okay maybe taking a turn off. It's not the end of the world because the power level is lower and our deck is still going to function. It's not going to be a make or break thing. Like if you're trying to win on turn 3 or you just want to have the strictly best mana base. We're on a $50 budget or something. So it's okay to play a tap land if it has other text.
Yeah, a tap land that will the first tap land that's like it enters tap and it doesn't really have many advantages.
Oh, I love these lands.
But these are the best ones because they have types. Snow duels. They are plains. They are forests. They are swamps. They are mountains, and they are islands. They're all of those things, and guess what? They're fetchable with fetches. If you happen to say you opened one and you opened one Modern Horizons pack, got a fetch, boom, get your Snow Duel on a budget.
What's great is that these are all like 5 cents. They're dirt cheap. And they help your Knight of the White Orchids, your Wood Elves, your Nature's Claim, your Sky Shroud claim, every Nature's Lore. Every one of these things, there's a lot more than you think cards that can fetch these reliably, and it just makes your mana base that much better for like 1 cent.
Yes. The Tainted Lands, these are all cheap. They're all under $3. But if you're playing a black X deck, you're in.
It's a free roll.
You're absolutely in for this free roll of land, especially if you have a decent number of swamps in.
Yeah, we talk about basic land types. It still matters if you're playing those tapped fetches. A lot of them's been reprinted in those precons. Every once in a while, they put them in there. And I think it's because it enters tapped, but then it fetches normally. So you can go get if you had a stomping ground, you can go get it with Mountain Valley. You just have to pay the cost of tapped land initially. So they're not much worse. They help landfall. They help graveyard delirium things. They are actually pretty useful.
Yeah, on a budget, they are extremely useful. We also have the reveal lands. This is a cycle that 10 years from ever touching, if I'm not in a budget, you reveal a basic land from your hand, and this comes in untapped. Actually, it's not even a basic land. It's types. So if you have a Snow Duel in your hand, reveal the Snow Duel to them, and boom, it comes in untapped.
You're living the dream. This is mostly for the allied side of this cycle because there's the Snarl enemy side, and I don't think they've quite hit the budget threshold yet, but the ally ones you should be good. They print them in like every precon because, as we all know, this is basically the same priority list as those non-budget options. So they're reprinting only the best lands in precons.
Yeah. Also for budget, we have Odyssey Signet lands. You have to put one into them, and then they tap to make both colors. They're like a green and a red, for an example. These are totally reasonable. They're not bonkers, insane, and don't want them in all the time, but they are solid, and they are mana fixing.
They're filter lands without the choice and without the safety net of wingding. They cannot do anything by themselves, so do not paint yourself into a corner when you're tapping mana. Always tap these stupid things first, and then they're going to fix your colors, and you won't even notice, and they'll just be duels. We also have rainbow lands in the budget, even though they're hard to come by sometimes. Command Tower. Everyone gets a command tower. I think when you announce that you want to play Magic, someone just comes and hands you a command tower. Everyone's got them. They're like 5 cents. No big deal there, and it's just a free duel.
Yep. Path of Ancestry, which is basically a tapped command tower with slight upside.
Yeah.
So if you're in a budget deck, guess what? Tap command tower is going to be completely reasonable. We also have Exotic Orchard. Mentioned that one earlier in non-budget, but now we're here in budget. It's worth like $1. So cheap.
So good. And with Path of Ancestry, we're kind of the threshold's lowered for what power we can get from a land. We're kind of okay with just a tapped rainbow land, especially when it says when you cast your commander, scry one. It's just extra bonus. So for tap lands that help mana fix, there's also the thriving lands. They are all rainbow lands, honestly. You can choose what duel it is. So even in 4-color decks, these are going to outperform another card on here, the tri-lands, which are great fixing. You got Murmuring Bosk, but there's also the cycle of do nothing tap lands like Mystic Monastery for the Jeskai.
Yeah, like we have literally a whole cycle of all of the 3-color tap lands that don't cycle, they don't do anything, but they come in just tap. They're extremely cheap. They get reprinted a lot.
Yeah, and Murmuring Bosk functions as a budget Inditha Triome. If you have a Wood Elves and an Abzan deck, boom, gets Murmuring Bosk all day. Also, Nimbus Maze and River of Tears, I have no idea where to lump these in, but they're just 2 very specific lands that are like dirt cheap. They kind of got chosen to be reprinted into the ground, and they're cheap enough to pick up. I think they're basically both free duels, honestly. For any blue-white or blue-black deck, pick these up too.
Yep. In Temples, these are like the very last thing we're considering for fixing. They're very They're just okay, but there's nothing wrong with them, especially on a budget. I'm not going to be sad to have to put this in my deck. Also, if you are in 2 colors, Temples are better than Thriving Lands in that case.
Yeah, I wouldn't bother with the Thriving Land. Play your 1-of Temple and feel okay about it. They just get so rough in multiples. It's like, oh man, how many of my lands are tapped now? I still want to keep it below 10 if possible in a budget deck. So, all right, that's the budget mana fixing dual lands, tri lands, and now we're on to the budget utility lands / colorless lands.
So the first one is 1 mana cycling lands. These are, they enter tap, they only produce 1 color, but for that same color from your hand, discard it, draw a card.
And all the card names make me feel bad for the land. It's like, oh, Secluded Steppe, Lonely Sandbar,
Aw.
Barren Moor, Tranquil Thicket. That one's okay, but Forgotten Cave, that's the saddest one of them all.
Tranquil Thicket doesn't sound lonely.
Tranquil Thicket's just chilling, but Forgotten Cave is like in the corner crying. There's also Ash Barrens. It cycles for a basic, so it's kind of like an Evolving Wilds, but better.
Yeah, it is definitely better than Evolving Wilds. Ghost Quarter, Tectonic Edge. We're replacing. We don't have Strip Mine. We don't have Wasteland. Those are expensive. Ghost Quarter, Tectonic Edge. That's going to be our go-to for our land destruction slot. 4 lands.
You still want it. Even if your budget, you're still going to run into these things that make you go, oh no. And budget land decks are even harder to press for ways to answer these troublesome lands. Like if somebody, they open a Nykthos in a pack, they're going to play it even if they're in a budget. So you've got to be able to answer this stuff.
Yeah, these next two I really like. Hanwar Battlements and Flamekin Village. Battlements enters untapped, taps for only Wingdings, but you can pay red, tap it to give a creature haste. The Flamekin Village enters tapped unless you reveal non-elemental. Random. Just don't even worry about that tax. But it produces red, which is actually colored mana, and if you pay a red and tap it, give a creature haste. I think both these are very, very solid cards. And in the slightest of situations, they do creep in the non-budget decks.
They can make it or break the difference of a game. If we're all kind of sitting here and waiting for the next big play, well, guess what? Yours is coming out a turn sooner because it's attacking right now. My Inferno Titan, my Drakuseth, Maw of Flame, they're coming in. They're messing you up right now.
Yeah, Tali. Get in there, Tali.
Get in there. Castles, we haven't talked too much about them, and the green and black ones are a little out of our budget, but the Jeskai Castles, 1,000% in any budget deck because they just do stuff. Have creatures? Okay, great. +1 up, sure. Maybe sometimes I'm going to want to scry 2 or make a 1/1. Absolutely better than a basic land.
Yeah, exactly. I want to make a 1/1. I'm a token deck. Maybe I'm running out of resources. Okay, I'll take a free 1/1. That's better than literally this being a plains.
If you're just a control deck, you're just sitting here. It's like, all right, a 1/1 instead of nothing. Great.
Yep. Card went over already. Buried Ruins. Budget artifact decks. Absolutely going to love this. Some mana fixing. These are budget cards I'm only probably going to on a budget because they all enter tapped. Croson Verge, Myriad Landscape, and Blooded Woodland. You pay a mana cost, you sacrifice them, and you go get some lands out of your deck. Croson Verge can get ones with types, which is a forest and a plains. You can get some snow duels and stuff like that. Myriad Landscape, they have to share a type, and Blooded Woodland, they can just be whatever basics you want.
Yeah, you're going to take a little bit of a hit on tempo, but you are ramping in a land slot with Myriad Landscape and Croson Verge because the lands that they fetch also enter tapped, but at the cost of going up a land. And Blooded Woodland says, well, I'm going to make you pay more of a premium, but this land enters untapped.
I have always loved Myriad Landscape, and it's been in my decks forever, and I think I'm finally coming to the realization that it's just a budget card.
I love it so much.
We're
slowly phasing it out of our decks, and it just makes me so sad.
It's the same thing with Burnished Heart. I feel like it's in the same slot as that, where it's like these things are just too slow for current Commander.
Maybe we'll have some kind of like 2021 realizations about the format wrap up or something. I don't know where it can go, but these miscellaneous thoughts that we have. Remember Bonder's Enclave? Because we already mentioned it, but if your commander's beefy, you got beefy boys regularly, this is card draw, which we are more than happy to play in our budget deck.
Yep, very cheap. Mystic Sanctuary, probably only going to go in mono blue decks on your budgets because you can't really fetch it.
Don't forget about it.
But don't forget about it. It's absolutely going to be amazing in any mono blue deck.
It's so silly. It's banned in things because it's so silly. Gaia Reach Sanitarium and to a lesser extent Miko Koro because I think that's much less budget. But Gaia Reach fuels your graveyard strategy, fuels madness, discard, delirium, whatever. I don't know why I keep saying delirium like it's a supported thing. This is a good land.
Yes. The Innistrad, Utility Cycle, and the Squarg, the Rage Pit. We mentioned these before, but the whole cycle for Innistrad lands is amazing. And then you got Squarg, which that card has just hit my radar, and it's like, dang, this card's actually solid. I can afford a Kester Griffon because it's like $5 or $6. Guess what? You can get a Squarg for like 50 cents.
And if all you care about is trample, all right, Squarg does more than a Kester Wolfrun activation.
It does.
With X being 0.
Yeah, absolutely. Solid card. Moving on, we have the Desert Cyclers. These come in tapped also, or you can pay 1 and the color of it to cycle it. It also has the desert type that's relevant for things like scavenger grounds or things along those lines. And they also matter for the Pain Deserts, which come in untapped, tapped for Wingdings, or you can pain yourself 1 life to make the color, and they all have activated abilities. None of them are super great, but they are extra utility in your land slot that you might not be able to get otherwise on a budget.
Yeah, it's not the end of the world if you want to cut your Secluded Steppe for a Desert of the True if you have a Shefet Dunes in your deck, because every once in a while it can pump your team. I've actually won a game with Shefet Dunes. I was really surprised because I just threw it in for Field of the Dead types, which they are also good for. So keep them in mind, I guess. Don't auto-exclude them, but they're a little niche.
Yep, in your sacrifice decks, high market, 100%. We talked about this
Easy.
one. Just a great card, great way to sacrifice. The Kaldheim Uncommon Land Cycle.
Very good.
They all enter tapped, and they just produce only one color, but they have a 2-color activated ability to do something. My favorite one is probably Lichara.
Mirror Lake.
Lichara, Mirror Lake. Love that one. You can just clone one of your creatures on a land. Totally nice to have that utility.
I mean, they're all surprisingly effective as far as what they do. I mean, the green-black one's going to kill something and make some tokens. The red-white one's a double tutor. The blue-red one's a pyroclasm on a land. That is not the worst, even if I'm paying a premium for it. Mm-hmm. Because late game, I'm going to have more advantage and access to things than you guys. Because guess what? My lands do something and yours don't.
Yes. A couple hideaway lands here. Mosswarp Bridge, Windbrisk Heights. You can play, there's the red one, the Spine Rocknell. That falls off quite a bit. The first two, though, Mosswarp Bridge and Windbrisk Heights, these are very good cards, especially on a budget. I mean, sometimes I sneak a Windbrisk Heights into my non-budget decks.
Yeah, they totally pull their weight and they draw a card on a land slot. Think of it that way. Shelldock Isle is unplayable.
They also cheat mana.
Yes, and they cheat mana. Shelldock Isle, unplayable. Black one, real bad. It's like harder to get than Shelldock Isle.
Well, that one's not real. That one, don't even think about that being an existing card because that card is the most garbage in Commander.
This is an incomplete cycle.
Yes. Reliquary Tower. Overplayed. Shouldn't be in as many decks as it is. But when you actually care about this, your commander fills your hand nonstop. Maybe like, I can't even think of one. Just what a commander that just, you always have like this huge giant hand. You're discarding way too much. Then it's actually good. When it's actually a free roll in your deck and it actually matters, take it.
Sometimes commanders that say discard a card, do something, they want Reliquary Tower too, depending, because now you have more cards that you can discard, and you're just not worrying about it. You can control your own hand size anyway. Rogue's Passage, I like it more in budget when it's more likely to push through damage. In regular commander, in the higher powered tuned decks, you're not going to always have 5 mana laying around to just like, okay, 5 mana, waste half my turn at least. Now I'm sending this at you. I hope I don't have anything. It's much easier to find the time in a budget where people are just less likely to have 0 mana interaction with your commander.
Yeah, Rogue's Passage, solid. Artifacts lands, a lot of these are cheap. They're just, if you care about the artifact count, put some artifact lands in your deck.
Yeah, same as before, but they're also budget. Same with Tyrite Sanctum. Care about bumping your commander, maybe it'll get indestructible. I think this is a very useful land in the budget. It provides some like surprising oomph when your commander is indestructible on a budget table.
I'm absolutely going in on MDFCs when I am playing budget. You can play plenty of these. Balaghat Recovery is out of range, and I think the Valakut's Awakening is out of range. Then the Mythics are obviously out of range, but everything besides that, they're mostly under $3. They're so solid. Play the ones you can that synergize with your deck. Read them all. Just if you haven't read all the MDFCs and you don't know what they all do, just look them up. Because guess what? I just built a deck and I put the one that puts a dang +1/+1 counter on something in my deck.
I think the only ones you generally stray from are the creatures, with the exception of the white one, because that one is the most playable. But the creatures are pretty You're not getting much on either half. But when you're getting something your deck wants on one half and the other half is a freaking land, get in there.
Get in there.
This is the last section. We're done with non-budget. We're done with budget. This is, hey, why didn't you mention X card? Well, it's because we think it's a popular trap, and we're just not going to play it, and here they are.
Yes. Maze of Ith. We're just not high on this card at all. I understand there's utility. There is few and far. There are some decks that Maze of Ith is actually a real card in.
There's some combos. I need to mention the combos before.
They're few and far between. Yes. I think Maze of Ith is generally a trap overall. Though there are homes for it, avoid it. Unless you have a really good plan with this card, it's not worth the slot.
Yeah, if you're thinking it's a value land, I think you're probably wrong. It's more of a combo piece / this isn't really a land. It's some other piece that I need.
Make sure you're putting it. If you put it in a spell slot, it's defensible. If you put it in the land slot, it starts to get a little shady.
Yeah, Temple of the False God, I think everyone's pretty much caught onto this one. It's just not reliable enough. I get that it's a free roll in the late game, but in the early game, it's nothing. It's not even a land. It doesn't tap for mana. Too risky. Get it out of here.
Yeah, agree 100%. Unclaimed Territory. This is... the way to say this is Cavern of Souls. This is not.
Absolutely. That provides a relevant line of text. This adds no text, which means Port Town makes mana that's blue or white for all of your spirits. Unclaimed Territory makes colorless mana for any instant, any sorcery, any enchantment, and any artifact you need to play.
Yeah, just not worth it. Ancient Ziggurat, also a huge trap.
Worse, actually.
If you have a 100% creature count,
yeah,
you're in. This is a rainbow land in that case.
Free roll.
If you have, the number if I had to guess is 7. As soon as you hit 7 non-creature spells to your deck, I'm off Ancient Ziggurat.
Which is, as we've guessed, most decks.
Yeah, almost every deck. So Ancient Ziggurat is a total trap.
All right, we have Rupture Spires.
There's like
listed.
4 of these.
There's Infinite Rupture Spires. They enter tapped, and they're like, no. I'm entering tapped. I'm going to ask a little bit more from you. If you don't pay a mana right now, I'm going to off myself and put myself in the graveyard. Not okay. Do not do this. These cards are not worth it, even though they are rainbow lands.
Yeah, it's a rainbow land that taxes you. You just don't. You can't waste your whole early game just playing a tapped Rupture Spires, and not just a tapped Rupture Spires, a tapped Rupture Spires that taps their land. Get out of here.
I don't need to be like mentally tormented by my lands.
Yes.
No.
I think Guild Gates are just they've hit the point that they're not playable. These Guild Gates and tapped like the tapped game lands.
The game lands, the regular lands with no text. Guild Gates are better than a literal tap land like. I can't even think of a Tranquil Grove is, I think, a tap land. They're better than that. You put them in mazes in, obviously, but you do not need just tap land, no frills anymore. The lands we listed above, all cheap, all better.
Yeah, you have to be. These are playable on really constricted budgets.
I'm trade binder deck.
Yeah, I'm talking about where you can't. You're going to spend maybe $10 on your deck. Okay, then these start to become playable. But we have to think. We have to talk about the game in a sense of like. You're going to make some effort to buy cards. I mean, not everyone has the money, and I understand that completely. But when we talk about it, we do have to take into consideration that we can't help you build your trade binder deck. We don't know what you own.
Yeah, trade binder decks are their own animal, and we did do a video on it, but we can't help you build a trade binder deck. It's your trade binder. Go crazy. Evolving Wilds and Terramorphic Expanse, probably the most surprising ones on here, maybe except for Mazavith, which has very staunch defenders, but they are okay. In Landfall decks, I'm thinking maybe, but you still have all the slow fetches, which are all better than these, and even Ash Barons also better, and I just think they end up being like your 11th and 12th and 13th tap lands that you don't need to bother with.
They're probably fine in one-color Landfall decks. That's
green,
it's
then?
So specific.
Morog.
It's such a specific thing. It's also probably fine in, what is it called? What is the mono blue Cosima?
Cosima, yeah.
It's probably good in Cosima, too.
Yeah, maybe Archelos, Lagoon Mystic. I don't know.
There's one color Landfall decks. I'm fine with these. Otherwise, you can just avoid them.
Yeah, I think Magic's gotten powerful enough. We've got enough dual lands. We can forget about Evolving Wilds, Terramorphic for the budget. Also, Panoramas, I think these have phased out as well. They only get basic lands, so they don't get any of the fancy snow duels and things we have access to. They cost mana. They do enter untapped, which is nice. So that is in consideration because you can just kind of wait to crack them for a landfall trigger. Still, I'm off it.
Yeah, paying the 1 mana just is like devastating for how much it just destroys these cards' powers.
Yeah, and there's also the fast lands. These are like actual lands that aren't even necessarily budget, but I just think you don't need to play fast lands. We have a ton of other duels, and a lot of the time, as opposed to the slow duels, this is after turn 2 they enter tapped.
Yeah, they're 100% not budget, and even if you have them, you just can avoid them most of the time.
They're not even that good. Forget budget. I just don't think they're that good.
They aren't. I mean, that's what I'm saying. They're like you said, and they're expensive. These are not cheap lands whatsoever.
It's like if we're looking at the graph of like, affordable is good and powerful is good. It's like this is neither.
Yes, and a card that I describe as unplayable to this day.
Most hated land.
No caveat. Halimar Depths. I absolutely hate this land. Enters tapped island, look at the top 3 cards, rearrange them. That's nothing. That's nothing. That's a top activation.
We're talking like even Yuriko, even decks like Yennet, even that. Like this is just get this out of your mind.
I honestly think that this is a card I would avoid playing. Almost, it's got to be.
Just say almost. No, don't even. We're avoiding. We're never playing this card.
I would never put Halimar Depths in my deck, regardless of budget.
And the best I can do to try to help you is to say, don't do it either.
Yeah. Please do not play Halimar Depths. It's poopy.
We did it. We just covered every land in the format. I'm sure we missed nothing, and hopefully this was helpful as a guide / encyclopedia / ultimate. What do the Nitpicking Nerds think about every land? So I'm glad we did this.
Yes. Yeah. It was a long video, and it was meant to be a long video because this is meant to entail as much as we could fit into one video. There's a lot of lands in Commander, and Commander is extremely complex. When you're not on using the priority list, I think works perfectly for budget and non-budget. And when it comes to utility lands, the ones that we listed are all playable in a lot of places. You got to just look at your deck. You got to go
pick your battles.
What is my game plan? Where am I going? Am I an artifact-based deck? Am I, a creature-based deck?
Aristocrats.
Am I going to be spell slinging? Figure it out and then pick the best ones for your deck that you want to build around. And if you're in 2 colors, make sure Field of the Dead's in there. That's our video. Special shout outs to all of our patrons. Love you as much as we can without making you uncomfortable. You let us sit here for an hour and talk about lands. Thanks. We appreciate that. I enjoyed sitting here for an hour and talking about lands.
It's been a hot minute since we touched on lands, and I like this as a follow-up to the short we've made. You can watch it if you want.
I watched it.
Yeah, I guess I also watched it, but that's not exactly what I meant. If you want to support the channel, TCG Player, link in the description. Just for you. Buy cards, same price. We get kickback on order.
Why use more word when same?
With few word do trick.
Do fewer do trick.
Dragon Shield, best sleeves multiverse, good sleeves.
Yep.
Buy those too.
Yeah, you buy those, and we also get a kickback using the affiliate links in the description below. We appreciate everyone who supports us in any way. Watching our videos, Dragon Shield, TCG Player, Patreon.com, everyone who has supported us this year, because this year has been amazing for the Nitpicking Nerds. Thank you, thank you, thank you.
Tidbit about our lives. I am only going to say this 7 times, and afterwards, I am not responsible for anything. Spoiler alert!
Spoiler alert!
To the maximum degree on Spider-Man No Way Home, because we just saw it like a few hours ago, and we're going to dish about it.
Yes, I understand this movie technically released the same day as this video. Be very aware, if you are going to continue watching the video from this point forward, we will spoil the movie Spider-Man No Way Home.
The movie that will be ruined is that for you. Do not watch this if you don't. Come back later and see what we have to say about it.
Spoiler, 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 spoiler for Spider-Man No Way Home.
The newest Spider-Man movie.
Yes.
All right. We went and watched this movie. This was the best Spider-Man movie I've ever seen. One of the most satisfying movies I've ever watched in terms of like fan service, I guess.
Yes. It's super heavy on fan service. But sometimes you're just okay. Sometimes fan service really gets there.
They brought everyone. They got Jamie Foxx, Willem Dafoe. They got the guy who played Sandman, the guy who plays the Lizard.
Doc Ock.
Doc Ock is back. I did not expect Jamie Foxx to be in this. And then obviously the piece de resistance, Andrew Garfield and Tobey Maguire, which most people figured, are they going to be in this? And yes, it's amazing.
Yes, it was super fun and enjoyable. And Willem Dafoe does say the best line. He says, "I'm something of a scientist myself."
Tobey Maguire goes, "Oh, my back." Come on. And he has Andrew Garfield crack his back. That is like amazing. They knew what was up. The only thing we didn't get, spoiler alert, pizza time.
Well,
no pizza time. I was so ready for pizza time.
Yeah, there was not really an opportunity for pizza time, unfortunately.
When they made the portal to go find Toby, he could have had a pizza. Could have been like, I just was getting dinner, guys. It's pizza time.
Yeah, it's an enjoyable movie. A lot of fan service, though. If we like, it's funny. It's not the best Spider-Man movie at all.
Not literally, but it's the most enjoyable.
The best Spider-Man movie, not close. I really don't think it's close. Is Into the Spider-Verse. I don't think any Spider-Man movie compares to that on a level of like actual like. Not just like I understand
goodness.
I enjoy the old Spider-Mans. I love the memes. I love how like silly they are, and I really enjoy the newer Spider-Mans with Tom Holland. It's been a good trilogy. But if you watch Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse, that movie is great.
It's like the full package. It's got the campiness and the humor, and they can do a lot more with the animation of it.
You also have you also get to have Nicolas Cage and
John Mulaney.
John Mulaney. It's so random.
He's a pig cartoon.
Isn't it Haley Steinfeld also?
Oh, maybe. She's like just an actor. I don't know. She's in a bunch of movies.
Yeah. She also sings my least favorite song about butterflies and zoos.
Butterflies are not actually in zoos.
Not usually.
Not spoiler, but fun fact, Haley Steinfeld. Butterflies not in zoos.
Yeah. Butterflies do not usually exist in zoos. There are examples of sometimes they do have bugs, but not usually. When you go to a zoo, you don't go, "I'm going to see the butterflies."
Right.
Peace out, Tribe Scouts.